All right, we've reached that time of the year when all of the best of lists come out. Before I jump into mine, I want to acknowledge that there are a ton of excellent films that came out this year. Since I only have a certain number of slots, though, I had to make some tough decisions. The movies that I have chosen, they may not be perfect, or even my highest rated, but these are the ones that either stuck with me or I had the most fun with, making them my best. Also, in order to be on this list, I did a standalone review during the year, or I reviewed them for our weekly podcast. Now, I know our lists are going to differ, so please share your top movies in the comments below. All right, without any apologies or excuses, here are my top 10 list of best movies from 2024. Starting with number 10, this is a horrific French film that used real spiders for several of its sequences. Infested, or Vermines, is one of two arachnid-themed horrors that came out this year. While the other one, it was a bit absurd, this one created genuine chills and heebie-jeebies thanks to the claustrophobic setting of a quarantined apartment building and then rapidly reproducing eight-legged freaks. Now, admittedly, I didn't connect with most, if not all, of the characters, but the visual effects, both practical and CGI, were uncomfortably convincing. And there's a scene that had me holding my breath and doing my best not to violently shake as the characters had to traverse down this hallway that was just coated in webs with spiders all around. And of course, to add to the tension of that were the urgent time complications and the lack of lighting. The movie does go off the rails a bit at the very end, but if you are looking for a freaky movie that can make your skin crawl, you may want to check out Infested. As a side note, it's also fun to watch with family members who are terrified of spiders or bugs. Their reactions can be almost as entertaining as the movie. All right, moving on to number 9. Some of you may be upset by the relatively low placement for this on the list, but Terrifier 3, it fills the spot. Now, I'm highly impressed with how Damien Leone has taken a niche horror character and over the course of 3 Terrifier films had delivered ever-deepening lore that has catapulted art into icon status, but also then gifted us with a spectacular final girl in Sienna. Now, the gore for the third film, it's excessive and brutal, which makes it all the more fun to watch. And all of this is combined with some exquisite humor from the speechless art, making him this diabolically twisted villain who can make us laugh and then gag. The visceral reactions come from scenes like seeing somebody zippered back to front or watching Art attempt to strangle somebody with entrails. I mean, each kill, it's brutal, with practical effects that are award-worthy. Now, while Terrifier 2 felt overly long, this one expedited some of the action and drama to give us a somewhat quicker presentation. Now, if you stayed away from these because of the extreme gore, know that the story that is developing, it is rich with imagery and creativity. Leone is taking the traditional slasher story and then the traditional supernatural horror and combining them into a demented but engaging tale of good versus evil. Okay, so I've kicked off the list with back-to-back horrors, so changing it up just slightly, coming in at number 8 is Strange Darling, starring Willa Fitzgerald and Kyle Gallner. Now, the story is told in an out-of-order sequence, creating an engaging and intriguing narrative that executes some really fun twists. The movie, it's shot on film, so it has this time-out-of-space feeling, appearing like it takes place in the late 70s, maybe early 80s, but it's a modern story, occurring within the present. The movie showcases some anxiety-infused action sequences, as well as just some quietly tense dialogue-driven scenes. The acting, it's sometimes uncomfortable, but not in an awkward sense. The performances put us on edge because we can sense something is amiss, but we can't necessarily pinpoint why. And there are also some wildly misleading visuals that work to then keep us off kilter when it comes to determining what's really going on. Now, one of my favorite scenes in the movie features Ed Begley Jr. and Barbara Hershey as this old hippie couple living on an isolated farm. Begley Jr. is cooking breakfast, and my arteries started solidifying just simply from watching the man cook. It's a disgusting but humorous moment that somehow fits perfectly within this bizarre thriller. For rewatchability, this one needs time between viewings because once the reveal is made, it's hard to unsee any of the tricks that the story holds within the first viewing. But this didn't detract from the unexpected fun that I had seeing Gallner and Fitzgerald interact. They both bring an intensity to their characters that's somewhat rare. So now we're at lucky number 7. And again, this is a sort of horror. I mean, 2024 has been a really excellent year for us horror fans. Anyway, though, at number 7, Late Night with the Devil. David Dastmalchian proves in this film that he is more than the leading type of role material. I mean, he is exquisitely capturing the presence and demeanor of a late-night show host mixed with some pompousness and skepticism. And the presentation is an unsettling one, just slowly unveiling typical late-night TV tropes like illusionists or mystics, and then introducing us to the more disquieting introduction of a supposedly possessed girl. Now, the set designs, costuming, and production values all make us feel as though we have been transported back to 1977, using a lot of earth tones in the coloring and then creating graininess on the screen. And as the events unfold, the creep factor rises, just showing us some brief but gnarly imagery that can stick with you just thanks to how horrific they appear. And then, in the culmination of the finale, things go bat-crap crazy. Now, I know this is where the movie lost some people. I mean, it went too extreme or off the rails, and then it lost some of the illusion that the rest of the film had worked hard to establish. But for me, it was an enjoyable cap to the craziness. Yeah, it was odd, and even was somewhat out of place, but the payoff was exciting thanks to the commanding performance all the way through from Desmalchian. Okay, we're almost halfway through. Coming in at number 6 is a movie that hasn't been released widely yet. It's Better Man. Now, it's the raw and unflinching story of pop superstar Robbie Williams, who is portrayed as a chimpanzee. This movie has haunted me since I saw it, which is funny because I wasn't even excited to see it. I mean, it looked like something that absolutely no one was asking for. And yet, thanks to the vulnerability of Williams and then the phenomenal direction by Michael Gracie, this turned out to be one of my absolute favorites. The mocap for the chimp is awesome, creating a visual that is just as good as the Planet of the Apes movies. And when you combine that with the enveloping music and spectacular choreography, the entire visual presentation I thought was captivating. Now, I didn't know anything about Williams' life prior to this, and while some of it is obviously fantastical, there is a groundedness to the storytelling, thanks to Williams' willingness to showcase the very ugly parts of his past. He doesn't shy away from the addictions and missteps, making his recovery all the more wonderful to experience. And while this isn't necessarily a family movie, the theme of family is a core element, shown in a way that can grab you by the collar and then pluck at every emotional string you have. I mean, I walked out of the film on a high, craving to hear more of his music and then longing to watch it again. Okay, we're 5 down, 5 to go. For my number 5 pick of my top 10 best movies of 2024, oh, look, hey, it's another horror. Surprise, surprise, Abigail. Now, this vampire-themed horror comedy was way more fun than I anticipated. The cast is stacked with actors who bring charm and quirks to the story, but also work as a dysfunctional ensemble to create witty retorts and snarky dialogue delivery. Melissa Barrera, Dan Stevens, Catherine Newton, Alicia Weir, William Catlett, Angus Cloud, Kevin Durand, and Giancarlo Esposito, they are outstanding. And while I love Dan Stevens in his role, the standout for me was Kevin Durand. I mean, he's the muscle of the group, who comes across as sort of a dullard, but he gets to showcase a huge heart, as well as some truly hilarious moments. I mean, the biggest drawback to the entire movie wasn't even the movie, but the marketing in the trailer. They gave away what could have been a most excellent twist. But that's not what happened. So for me, knowing the twist, though, it didn't ruin the storytelling. Instead, just had me anticipating the bloody, unhinged gore that was sure to be delivered. Now, Alicia Weir in the title role, she is innocently menacing, capturing the pureness of a young and lonely girl, but also the ferocity and rage that is contained within her. I mean, she's devious and frightening, as well as endearing and slightly demented. There's a lot of rewatchability in this for me, and what makes this even more exciting of a watch is that director duo Radio Silence confirmed that this takes place in the same universe as their other bloody horror comedy, Ready or Not. For number 4, Alex Garland gave us his cautionary and possibly even prophetic thriller, Civil War. Kirsten Dunst, Wagner Moura, Kaylee Spaney, and Stephen McKinley Henderson star as journalists, attempting to get to Washington, D.C. during a coup-turned-civil war. Now, while on the outside the movie may appear that it's purely a politically centered storyline, this is way more focused on the journalists' journey as they traverse the treacherous areas, capturing the events with a callous and unbiased eye. Now, Kaylee Spaney was the standout for me, showing the drive and determination of a burgeoning journalist who just gloms onto her hero, played by Kirsten Dunst. Now, the character progression, it's both haunting and sad, thanks to the twinge of realness that we see, especially with watching somebody who's so hell-bent on pursuing their dream. Now, the melancholy and the hopelessness that are contained in this story, they are offset by small moments of impactful dialogue or thrilling action. And this movie features probably one of the most harrowing and realistic lines, with Jesse Plemons asking what kind of Americans the reporters are. I mean, is this foretelling what's to come, or is it just a cautionary tale to avoid the destructively dire circumstances that are portrayed? I mean, no matter the answer, though, the visuals and the pacing of this story are beautifully delivered, creating a dystopian landscape that never lets up on the thrilling tension. And this isn't going to leave you uplifted or encouraged, but it is a wonderful character story with players who are difficult to shake. Okay, we're almost at the end. Coming in at number 3 is probably the most visceral and disgustingly beautiful film of the year, The Substance. Both Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley give us brave and thrilling performances, filled with body horror that's going to burn itself into your mind's eye for quite some time. Director Coralie Fargeat brings this relatable story to life by asking the question of what one will do to hold on to their beauty. The drive to maintain what's been lost, it is powerfully executed by Moore, allowing us to see the mournful loss that she feels when it comes to her persona and appearance, driving her to do something extreme. And the repercussions of this decision, they were wild. From the body-splitting birth to the Akira-like morphing that finally arrives. We are shown what happens when selfishness overrides symbiotic preservation, leading to mutual destruction. Now, the practical effects in this are expertly crafted. They're taking the body horror just to new heights and then leaving us with indelible visuals that are true nightmare fuel. And while I absolutely adored both performances from Qualley and Moore, Dennis Quaid gives us probably one of the most realistically unhinged character portrayals of this year. And I'm not even sure he was acting. As the misogynistic and creepy producer, he is as slimy as they come. And I'm not sure I've ever seen a more horrifying eating scene than when we get to see him having lunch with Demi Moore. It's enough to make you lose your appetite right there. Now, The Substance, it is brilliantly told, and a haunting story, playing out as a cautionary tale about the fading effects of appearance and how that is tied to identity and relevance, while also allowing us to see the struggle for acceptance, both internally and externally, that's present in society, especially for women. Now, for the penultimate entry into my list, coming in at number 2 is Wicked, Part 1. Now, I am already a massive fan of the Broadway show. I saw it just this year on Broadway in New York, and I had seen it previously in San Francisco and then my hometown. John M. Chu somehow doesn't lose the look, feel, and emotion of the stage production, while also adding some depth and meaning to scenes that benefit from the added context. Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo are phenomenal in their respective roles of Galinda and Elphaba. Both actresses honor the iconic roles made famous by Kristen Chenoweth and Idina Menzel, while also making the characters their own, bringing new life and personality to the screen. Now, I love the ditzy and quirky self-absorption of Grande's performance, but equally, how we watch the character experience growth and depth. And with Erivo, how she takes Elphaba from this cautious and introverted person to one of inviting confidence, love, and power. Jonathan Bailey, he's also perfectly cast in the role of Fiyero, capturing the brainless charm of the character while also being able to sing beautifully and then hit all of the choreography for his numbers. While I'm bummed that this is only the first part of the story and the film ends at intermission, the way Chu has built the world of Oz is tangible and awe-inspiring. From the vibrant colors to the rich personalities, each new scene takes us further into the friendship and lore that builds up that other story of Oz with the annoying girl and her dog. I am really excited for part 2, but for now, I'm just going to watch this one on repeat. Okay, so before I get to my number 1 pick for Best Movie of 2024, I have a few honorable mentions that I want to include. Now, I'm not going to go into depth on these, but I just felt I couldn't leave them off the list. So, in no particular order, here are my 5 honorable mentions. Anora, Conclave, The Order, The Coffee Table, and Smile 2. If you've not seen any of these, definitely give them a watch. They're each very different, and I love them for equally different reasons. All right, for my top favorite Best Movie of 2024... is that even the right way to say things? Whatever, my list. It's the thriller from Osgood Perkins, Longlegs. With Micah Monroe as the lead and Nicolas Cage as the baddie, this psychological thriller was such an excellent surprise. I love how the director infused his love for Seven into the story, giving us subtle and overt homages to that perfect film. But what really gets me in this story is all of the imagery that is present throughout, cluing us into what's driving the story of some of the murder cases. Now, the visuals are brief, sometimes very difficult to see, but still present and hugely effective in creating a dreadful sense of unease and growing tension. Monroe is wonderful in her role. She's got this personality that's cagey, quiet, even strange, but incredibly insightful and bright. And then we have the utterly disturbing performance by Nick Cage. Even without the disfiguring makeup, he is so creepily crazed and haunting. His vocal inflections and alarming sing-song attitude, combined with a psychotic detachment, make for a very memorable character portrayal. And the supernatural elements that are interwoven add a whole new level of intrigue, taking this from a standard thriller to one with meaning and depth, worthy of multiple rewatches and examinations. And I've seen this twice in the theater and twice at home, and it continues to captivate and intrigue. All right, so that is my list. How many of mine were also on yours? And what did you have on your list that I didn't include? I mean, I'm sure there's a ton, right? Well, my list initially had over 30 entries, so it was definitely a chore to trim it down. I'm looking forward to see what you loved this year. Put them in the comments below. Thank you so much for spending this year with me, and I hope you have a spectacular 2025. If you enjoyed this, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.